Okay, we're back, and we stopped the last video a little bit short. It was 2.5 um, out of this video series, and now we're going to continue, and we're really going to get into some real phenomenology. I think here it's kind of a lighter version. I might say phenomenology light because it is a. You have to remember, it is a lecture. It is a speech, or so to speak, that that Ortega y Gasset is giving to an audience. So he has to, since they can't go back and listen to what he said, he's got to kind of put it um, in a way which is congenial to their understanding, kind of on the go, on the fly. So what we were saying in the last video was that there was Drastam, D-R-A-S-T-A-M, had some concerns about Ortega y Gasset's views, and he was saying that much of our life is habitual, and that since we're exploring the plane of radical reality, we need to take note of that. And my reply is that, well, if you keep reading, we will find that, in fact, this is the case. And Ortega y Gasset does acknowledge this. And remember, this is a speech he's giving, so it works well for this medium of communication. Not only that, but you have to take that into account when you realize that and realize that really he's not going to go into depth as fully as he could. Okay, he's trying to get this basic point across about the structure of the plane of the radical reality and the structure of what he calls our world, which is chapter 3. All right, he says, and last thing is that he qualified the word. He said that man and world are equally primordial, and we have to discuss them both. We can't discuss one or the other, like Aristotle with things or Descartes with just the cogito. And in addition to that, things, when he says things, he always means things that have meaning and significance for us. And when he says man, he doesn't mean the thinking, rational man per se, but the acting, concerned, practical, having to take responsibility for my life, pre-reflective, you might say, engagement with the world. Okay, not a standing back and staring at the world, but really a participation in it. Okay, he says, we have now, this is page 62. If you go on Google Books, you can follow along. You have to search Man and People by Ortega y Gasset. All right. We have now to investigate the structure and contents of this environment, circumstance, or world in which we have to live. We said that it is composed of things as pragmata, that is, that in it we find ourselves with things. But this finding ourselves with things, encountering them, in itself requires certain investigations, and we shall now proceed to anatomize it rapidly, step by step. 1. And the first thing that needs to be said seems to me to be this. If the world is composed of things, these will have to be given me one by one. For example, one thing is an apple. Let us suppose that it is the apple of paradise rather than the apple of discord. But in this scene in paradise, we at once discover a curious problem. Is the apple that Eve gives to Adam the same apple that Adam sees and finds and receives? The same apple that Adam sees, finds, and receives? For when Eve offers it, all that is present, visible, patent, is half of the apple, and what Adam finds, sees, and is likewise only half an apple. What is seen, what is strictly speaking present from Eve's point of view, is something different from what is seen and present from Adam's point of view. So if I hold up, this book, you see something. You see, we both assume in our daily life that we both see the book. There's one book, but in fact, you have a different perspective on it from my perspective. We can never get the same exact perspective on an object. What you really see is, one profile of the object, maybe half of the object, or maybe just one profile view of the object. This is what we always see. This vision cannot deliver an entire object all at once. So he says, for This is what is seen, what is strictly speaking present from Eve's point of view, is something different from what is seen and present from Adam's. For every corporal body has two faces, and as in the case with the moon's two faces, only one of them is present to us. Here, to our surprise, we become aware of something that, once we have observed it, is a great truism, namely, that so far as seeing goes, what is strictly called seeing, no one has ever seen what he calls an apple, because an apple, according to all accounts, has two faces, but only one of them is ever present to vision. Furthermore, if there are two beings seeing one object, neither of them sees the same face of it, but another and more or less different face. Of course, I can walk around the apple or turn it in my hand in such a movement aspects, that is, different faces of the apple are presented to me, each continuous with the one before. But when I am seeing, really seeing, the second face, I remember the one I saw before and add it to the one that I'm seeing now. But of course, this adding of the remembered to the actually seen does not enable me to see all the sides of the apple at once. The apple, then, as a total unit, hence as what I mean when I say apple, is never present to me. Hence, it does not exist for me with radical evidence, but only and at most with an evidence of second order, the evidence supplied by mere memory, in which we preserve our earlier experiences concerning a thing. Hence, to the actual presence of what is only part of a thing, we automatically add the rest of it. This rest, then, we will say is not presented, but is presented or present. So he's saying that if you looked at, let's say, look at Kurt Goldstein's The Organism. If you look at it, the for the front side, this is what you actually see, and the back, the rest of it, at any given time, is present. And I don't really agree with his saying that it's that we add the memory of it to the we add the memory of the back of the book to to the front, and that's how we get it. But in a certain sense, I will say, yeah, there is a sense in which this idea of present is pretty useful. Alvin Noe is a recent philosopher, and he's used the term virtual to describe a similar phenomenon. Anyway, okay, so that's the first thing, right? He says, you will see that this idea of the present, of the presence attached to any presence of anything, an idea that we owe to the great Edmund Husserl, will cast much light for us on the way in which the things of the world appear in our life and on the world in which things are. Okay, now, the second point that Ortega is going to make next is really finally going to address this idea that this complaint that Drastum had in the second video of this series about how life is not, a lot of our life is habitual and I guess you could say unconscious or pre-reflective or something even below pre-reflective self-consciousness, something we can't even have an awareness of at all. There are also some parts of our life and consciousness that are implicit or tacit and that we can attend to, we can make them present to our consciousness, but usually they're sort of in the background, I might say. Okay, and then there are other things that there is a sort of more or less, maybe you could say intermittent, but more or less constant part of us, which is, more or less conscious of something. So there are many layers here. So we're going to address that specifically. The first part he wanted to note was the presence of all things, that you never see the full thing all at once, but it's always both at the same time. The invisible, hidden parts of things and the present, visible parts of things are given together at once, and that goes for everything that you